bummer. It's a bummer, Kurt. It's been a wonderful year. It's been special. It's been so fun for the city and obviously for us in the sports media. What was your feeling after a season would end in the playoffs for you? Like, did you sit in it? Did you kind of really try to process it? Did you try to move on fast? We're trying to figure out how to approach it as a fan base.
Yeah, I mean, it all depended on the season. Like every season was different. Some seasons you felt like you missed an opportunity. You were a better team than you put on the football field. And I think those years were a little bit more difficult. There were other times where you went in going, hey, we're not the better team. And so, yeah, we're going to go in. We believe we can win and we got to play great. But you lose and you're kind of like, hey, it was a great season. And we just, we met somebody that was better than us. And so many of those things were dependent, your emotions were dependent on how you looked at the situation. Of course, every team that gets the playoffs wants to be in the Super Bowl, wants to win it all, believes that they've got the capabilities of doing that. But, you have to step back and have some realism in those situations. And I think, how you saw that situation would lead you into how you felt and how long it took to get over some of those things, or even did you play good or did you not play well? When you look at like a Josh Allen or you look at a CJ Stroud coming out of these games, whether you felt you were the better team or not, knowing you didn't give your team or your team didn't play their best in that moment, those were things that definitely hung with you a lot longer. Just like, man, we missed an opportunity. We didn't play our best. If I would have just done this or this different, the results could have been different. And those are the things that I think go over in your mind, as opposed to, like my last playoff game, we played against the Super Bowl champs or eventual Super Bowl champs in the New Orleans Saints. And they were just a flat out better team than we were. And so you walk away going, hey, it was great to be there. We won a playoff game. We did a lot of great things. We just ran into somebody that was better than us that day.
Well, apply those thoughts to the Bears season then last night. I don't know if are the Rams that much better than the Bears? Bears could have had that game.
They weren't last night. I thought it was very evenly matched, and I thought the Bears did a lot of really good things. I think you're always going to second guess some different things. Like I always second guess coaches that go for it on every fourth down, and I second guessed that when they played the Packers and they were able to pull that one out. I second guessed it last night where it's like, I get it. And I understand the analytics and I understand, like they went for the first one, they didn't get it. And then they got the second one and everybody's like, see, you got 7 points instead of 6. And it's like, okay, it worked out there. But then you don't get the next 2. And now what? Now, there's 9 points versus 7. And so to me, things like that where we talk about the points and the points are one thing. And then there's a mentality that goes into it as well. There's something to, when we leave the field, we're ahead and the Rams are behind, and they feel that pressure of us driving and scoring and getting closer or holding the lead. And I think there's so many facets there that go outside of just numbers. So, if you're Ben Johnson, do you second guess some of those things? I'm sure, Caleb is second guessing that last throw. And I'm not saying he was wrong. I don't really know what they had talked about and what the dynamics were of. Obviously, DJ was running a higher angle, post route there. But I don't know if they've talked about, hey, if the safety's in this position, flatten it across, because we could all see why Caleb was throwing that and where the space was and how we felt if DJ crossed that safety space, that could possibly be a big play. Was it discussed? Did they talk about it in detail? So when it comes to a moment like that, can you trust those things? I've been in lots of situations where, as a quarterback, I see something and I want to wish my guys to see what I see, to do what I want them to do. And, sometimes I took that shot. Other times I second guessed it and didn't take that shot because I wasn't sure if my guy was going to do it, even though I knew it was there. I knew the opportunity. I saw it. I could make this throw. And if he does the right thing, this is a big play. And so all of those things, I think, are what you start to talk about and you start to second guess and you start to ask the question, hey, should I have done that? Did I make a mistake? I know we talked about it, but we didn't talk about it enough where I see, and now it cost us a game. And so those are the things I think you go through today, because it was a very evenly matched game. It was a very close game and went down to the wire. And every little, decision, and we talk about all the time, not one decision ever decides a game. Some are, more in the forefront and we're looking at them and have more of a spotlight on them. But there's a lot of things that factor into winning and losing a game. But there's no question that you always go back and you ask some of those questions and you wonder, and sometimes you second guess. Did I do the right thing in this moment for me, for my team, in that situation? And I'm sure because the game was so close, that's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what Josh Allen is doing. That's exactly what CJ Stroud is doing, because those were all winnable games that they didn't win. And that's when you really scrutinize it and ask why. And I think it's harder to let that go and get closure and move on to next season.
Even in a end of season situation, if you're Caleb, do you have the discussion with DJ about that particular play right now, or is that a phone call you make in February?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I don't really know. I don't know if it ever comes up again. I don't know if it's something you put in the back of your mind. So if we run this play next year, that's a note that we have. That's something that will stick with me. That's something, or sometimes you could go over right after the play, because you don't know if the game's over at that point, because the Rams still have to drive, and go over and grab DJ and go, hey, DJ, in that situation, what did you see? And you talk about it on the sideline, not that it's going to come up again in this game, but maybe it comes up in the championship game or the Super Bowl. And so you do that a lot in the course of normal games, where something happens and you go and you talk to somebody right away and kind of get it out there and let people know what you're thinking. Of course, if they watch the tape as a team, or if you watch it with your guys, you would definitely want to cover that when you do that. But not every team goes back and watches, this game as it's been the end of the season. They don't sit down as a team and go through the game film as you would every other week. And so it's a great question, but I think something that you definitely, worst case scenario, if you're Ben Johnson, you mark that down, on that play for the install next year, to say, hey, next year we're going to cover all the details. You can do this. You can't do this. This is what allows you to do this. This is what doesn't. Caleb, this is the only way you would you fine tune it to the point where that won't happen again. And, it could be easily just, hey, we're not going to let DJ adjust. So he's running to the back pylon. If that safety's taking it away, Caleb, don't throw it. Let's not have any indecision in moments like that. And let's take a check down and let's move on, so we don't have some of that confusion in big moments. So yeah, that's a great question, but I'm not sure the right way to necessarily handle that. I don't know if you do that 2 or 3 days after the fact, because then it probably just becomes, hey, this is your fault type of thing. You should have done this, or this is what I was expecting. And I'm sure it also has something to do with the relationship between the guys, or the coach and the guys, and where they feel they're at. And if they can, go back and cover that because they believe it's going to come up again in the future when they're together, and you make sure you handle it and you treat it like men.
You alluded to it a couple minutes ago that there's some quarterback responsibility, even if you see, a guy maybe not making the adjustment, or you think it's so hard. As you looked at it or saw it, any breakdowns, did Caleb have a moment to decide not to do it and say, you know what, it's 2nd and 8. We're 15 yards away. We got to win sitting here. I'm not going to take the chance that he's going to make this adjustment. Or is that unfair to expect of a young quarterback in real time?
Well, I think it's unfair to expect of any quarterback if they've discussed it. That's the hardest part, is that if there's a gray area of here's the route, but here's what you can do, and it's left gray in, okay, when can I do that? Why exactly do I do that? What are the elements that make me do that? I saw a situation like that with my son this year playing in college, where there was a scenario that happened, and, they had talked a little bit about, well, if you get this, you can flatten here, or you can stay higher on your angle depending on the leverage. And it got into a situation, and he had pressure, and he laid it up to where the guy was going, and then the guy separated and flattened, and it turned into an interception. So it was almost the exact opposite of what we saw the other day. And you come back, and at the end of the day, you kind of got to go, we just got to chalk that up to the gray area, because I wasn't sure if he was going to stay high, and he could have flattened or he could have stayed high, and that's where those things have to be so definitive, I think,
Okay.
when you're talking about it, to say if we're going to allow him to adjust, then we need to lay out the scenarios and what exactly that looks like, because I wouldn't want Caleb to hesitate. I want Caleb to think, oh, this is a scenario we talked about. DJ's going to flatten this. I'm going to throw it. We're going to get a big play. We're going to kick a field goal. We're going to win this game. Like, that's what I want Caleb thinking. And he looked very definitive in what he was doing. But again, was that laid out and designed? And that's the hardest thing for me always as a quarterback, when you allow freedom for your wide receivers. Do they see what I see? How many times do we have to rep that? A lot of people talk about it. That play is really expensive, is what they say. So you have a choice route. You're going to run a lot of choice routes. Well, that play is very expensive. We've got to spend a lot of time throughout a week going over it and looking at the scenarios and the defense playing different ways, so we're always on the same page. And so did you expend enough time on that play to say, we know in every scenario what the quarterback's thinking, what the wide receiver is thinking? And that's why when I played, I was very much in the camp, I don't want any gray area. You tell this guy to run where he's going to run, and you tell me what my read is, and let me make the decision. I don't want any indecision, so things like that happen. Oh, I'm going to throw it to the outside, and he's breaking inside. Why is he doing that? Like, those are the things to me that were very important. I wanted to put it all on my shoulders. Let me make the right decision. Let's not depend on anybody else to make the right decision. And so that was just me. That was how I liked to play, because I didn't like any of the indecision of, are they going to see it like I see it? Again, I could share a bunch of different examples. When I went to New York to play with the Giants, one thing that they wanted to do in their offense was run a lot of these kind of deeper choice routes, where this guy can run up, he can hook, he can run up, he can break inside, he can run up, and if he sees the safety flat, he can go deep. I was an anticipatory thrower. So I wanted to know and get the ball out as my guys were breaking and get it to them as fast as I could. And an offense like that handcuffed me, because it was like, now one of my greatest strengths is taken away from me. Now I've got to sit here and wait to see if he's going to do what I expect him to do. And then can I get the ball to him, as opposed to going, oh, the safety's going high, I know he's going to hook, boom, ball's out of my hands, I can complete it. And so much comes down to talking the details, making sure you're dotting every I and crossing every T, if you're going to allow flexibility within your offense by different guys.
Kurt Warner joining us for a few minutes to talk about the Bears game last night and the Bears season overall. Kurt, Caleb is living out everyone's like childhood or adolescent fantasy. That moment when you're in the backyard and you're like, there's 5 seconds left and I'm being blitzed. I'm just going to throw the ball up and see if someone catches it. He keeps doing it. He keeps making these impossible throws. So as someone who has a gold jacket, who's made a bunch of amazing throws yourself, what was it like for you to watch that fourth down play where he throws the ball 51.2 yards for a 14-yard touchdown?
Well, I mean, I think the first response is like everybody else, like, that was awesome. The second response is, that's unfair that he can do that stuff. And I never had a chance to do stuff like that, because you see it every week. Like, you're envious of guys that have that ability to be able to give your team even a chance like that. Like, if I had to run back and away from pressure, I'm probably never getting the ball to the end zone. So on, fourth down, I don't even give our team a chance. For him to be able to continually give his team a chance. A week ago on that fourth down situation, I was joking with the guys on game day morning, like, I could have done that. It's like, no, I couldn't have done that. Not with a guy chasing after me and both feet in the air and throwing it 25, 30 yards. Like, I couldn't have done that. And so I think that's the other thing, about it, is just that he's going to, over the course of his career, give this team a chance when very few guys would be able to give this team a chance. We've got a few select guys that can do that. Aaron Rodgers could do that in his day, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. There's a few guys that are going to give their teams opportunities to make plays and to win games that other guys just can't do. And I think that's one of the great things that we've seen come out of this year from Caleb Williams is he's been great in the moment, and he's shown time and time again that he's got this incredible ability to make some plays that a handful of guys in the world can make. And that's exciting. That has to be, one of the things that you take out of the season going, man, if we can just get a little better on defense, and if Caleb can get a little more efficient from down to go along with this wow factor that he brings, man, I mean, they're going to be around for a long time. They're going to be good for a long time. And you have to believe a guy like that is going to be able to, if the team is built around him, to elevate this team to a chance to win championships.
So, it's amazing stuff. So what does the partnership between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams focus on together as an off-season plan here? What's the MO going into an off-season like this? Yeah,
I mean, to me, it's really just about, okay, we got to figure out how to make Caleb more efficient. What is that? Is that diving into his technique and cleaning up some things with his technique? Although I don't believe he's a bad technician. Like when you watch his feet and shoulders and the way he does things, I mean, it's the reason he can make so many of these incredible throws, because I do think he has a solid, technique base to build from. But why does he miss and wildly miss some of these throws? Like, what is that? Is it going too fast? Is it throwing too hard? What are those elements? But that's what I want to identify is, like, to me, it wasn't as much him not or throwing to guys that were covered and not going through his progressions and finding the right guy as much as it was missing the guy that he was throwing to. And I want to know why that is. Is it, technique from a standpoint of, the timing of his feet, where his feet aren't quite ready or set to make these throws? Is it some of those other elements that I talked about? Is it just first year in the system? I wasn't as comfortable. I wasn't quite sure. And then all of a sudden something popped open and I was too fast getting there. But that's the one thing I want to identify, because I think he did so many things really well this year and he made so many great strides. And obviously he played winning football. He played winning football a lot, and especially in the moment. But I just believe they put themselves in so many tough situations this year because they weren't efficient early in games. How do we get more efficient in the first half of games so we're not always behind? So we don't always have to play in that mode, because we've seen it before. This year, it worked out for them. Like, they won so many of these games that were close and that they needed a play or two to be made, or we needed a drive or two from Caleb. We've watched the Chiefs do that, and they set the record for however many one-possession wins in a row or whatever. And then they got into a season this year, and they lost all of those. And that's usually what happens, is that you don't always get the breaks. So you have to create breaks earlier so you're not in these situations over and over and over again. And that, to me, I think is where you focus going into the offseason and into next season, is how do we clean that up and get a little more efficient offensively and specifically in the pass game before we hit next year.
Kurt, as always, it was a joy to talk with you about what the Bears are doing. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about who ends up being the Super Bowl opponents. Like, that'll be fun. But we appreciate all the work that you've done with us this season in trying to figure the Bears out. And it was a really fun ride to hear you each week talking about the development of this quarterback.
Well, it was fun for me too. I love being able to talk ball and having the opportunity to, dive in a little bit deeper. And then, as you said, it was a fun season. It's a fun season to cover a team that where they were last year to where they are this year, to the excitement moving forward into the future. It was a whole lot of fun. So look forward to talking through the rest of the year, but hopefully we'll be doing this for years to come, and we'll get to be talking about championships at some point.
That would be great.
Sounds great, Kurt. Thank you.
That's Kurt Warner.
All right, guys. Talk to you soon.
The Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
that was really good insight.
Really good insight on the offseason plan, and incredible stuff on the interception.
Yep.
Incredible stuff. And there's a lot there to think about. And we've spent a lot of time on that terrible moment. Can we spend some time on a good moment?
Yes. That's what I was saying to Kurt. Like that's the you're in your driveway, 3, 2, 1, like shooting the basket. Like that's the football equivalent.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
We're gonna sit in the loss, but let's sit in the game, because part of the loss and why it hurt is because he gave you the play of the year again.
Play of the year? Screw that. That is one of the NFL's greatest throws ever.
It would have lived forever had they won. With the loss, it's going to fade a bit.
Maybe. It's still one of the greatest throws that's ever been thrown in the history of the National Football League.
I appreciate the pause.